The Middle East Tinderbox, a symphony of controlled and uncontrolled escalation. The Middle East, as depicted in these reports, is a pressure cooker. The events are not random acts of violence, but a tightly choreographed, albeit terrifying, dance of escalation. The central plot is a shadow war between the Iran-led Axis of Resistance and the US-Israel alliance, a war that has just broken into the open with devastating consequences, revealing the strategic objectives and vulnerabilities of all parties. 1. The decapitation strategy and its aftermath. A plot revealed. The most seismic piece of information is the state funeral in Iran for approximately 60 people, including senior military commanders and nuclear scientists. Specifically named are Major General Mohammad Bagheri, Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, and General Hossein Salami, Commander of the IRGC and head of Iran's ballistic missile program. This is not a mere casualty report. It is the revelation of a successful, large-scale decapitation strike. The death of the two most powerful military figures in Iran, second only to the supreme leader, in a 12-day conflict, signifies a strategic victory for Israel and the US of monumental proportions. This was not a skirmish. It was a targeted campaign to cripple Iran's command and control and its strategic weapons programs at the highest level. Intentions and plots. Israel's plot, the Octopus Doctrine. For years, Israel, under leaders like Naftali Bennett, has advocated for the Octopus Doctrine. Instead of fighting the tentacles, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis strike the head of the octopus in Tehran. The assassination of Bagheri and Salami is the ultimate execution of this doctrine. Objective 1, military. Paralyze Iran's military apparatus. By removing the chief of staff and the head of the IRGC, you create chaos, disrupt chains of command, and force the regime to focus inward on succession and stability, buying Israel time and operational freedom. Objective 2, nuclear. The mention of nuclear scientists among the dead, coupled with the IEA report of very significant damage to the Fordow nuclear facility, is the second prong of the attack. Fordow is Iran's most heavily fortified enrichment site, built deep inside a mountain. Significant damage implies the use of highly powerful bunker-busting munitions, likely supplied by or coordinated with the US. The goal is unequivocal: to physically set back Iran's nuclear breakout capability by years. Objective 3, psychological. This sends an unmistakable message to Tehran: no one is safe. We can reach you anywhere, anytime. This is designed to sow paranoia within the Iranian leadership and deter future aggression. The US role: plausible deniability and active enablement. The US warning for its citizens to leave Iran immediately is the telltale sign of foreknowledge and complicity. Such warnings are never issued lightly. They are a clear indicator that Washington knew a major escalation was imminent and wanted to clear the decks. The lack of diplomatic relations is the perfect cover. The US can claim it's a precautionary measure while giving Israel the green light. The plot. The US likely provided the critical intelligence, satellite targeting data, and specialized munitions like the GBU-57 MOP, massive ordnance penetrator, required to hit Fordow. Its role was to be the enabler and the strategic backstop, not the public executioner. This allows Washington to maintain a veneer of distance and avoid a direct state-on-state war with Iran. Trump's intervention: a wrench in the works and a strategic signal. Donald Trump's claim to have prevented an Israeli plan to assassinate Khamenei is a multifaceted strategic communication. Signal 1 to the American electorate: I am the one who prevents World War III. He positions himself as the steady hand, contrasting with the perceived escalatory policies of his opponents. Signal 2 to Israel: you need me. Your current allies are letting you get dragged into a massive conflict, but I know how to manage Iran. He is simultaneously taking credit for Israel's security and undermining the current US administration's relationship with Tel Aviv. Signal 3 to Iran: this is the most subtle part of the plot. By revealing he stopped a hit on Khamenei, he is creating a bizarre back-channel communication. He is saying, I am not your existential enemy, I'm a deal maker. The people in power now are the real threat to you. This is an attempt to create leverage for a potential future negotiation on his own terms. His subsequent statement that he halted all efforts to negotiate is the stick to this carrot, reinforcing his image as a tough but ultimately pragmatic negotiator. Iran's intention: survival, vengeance, and narrative control. Iran is grievously wounded. The state funeral is an attempt to turn a devastating military loss into a propaganda victory, rallying the populace around a narrative of martyrdom and defiance against the great Satan, US, and the little Satan, Israel. The Houthi missile launch from Yemen intercepted by Israel is part of this response. It is Iran's way of demonstrating that the axis of resistance is still operational despite the decapitation strike. It is a low-cost, plausibly deniable retaliation that shows resolve without triggering an all-out war that a weakened Iran cannot currently afford. Their primary intention now is to consolidate power, appoint successors, assess the full damage, and plan a long-term, asymmetric revenge. 2. The economics of attrition. The THAAD dilemma. The data on the THAAD Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Missile expenditure is one of an analyst's most valuable finds. It reveals a fundamental, perhaps fatal, flaw in Western military strategy. The plot Iran and its proxies have adopted a strategy of cost imposition attrition. They know they cannot defeat the US or Israel in a conventional high-tech war. Instead, their plot is to bankrupt their adversaries' defense systems. The math of ruin. A THAAD interceptor costs $12, 15 million. An Iranian ballistic missile or drone costs at most a few $100,000, and in many cases far less than 100,000. FIRING 60 80 THAADSAT a COSTOF 100,000. Firing 60 to 80 THAADs at a cost of $1 billion to intercept a swarm of missiles that cost Iran perhaps $30. $50 million to launch is an economically unsustainable model. The production gap. The report that the US can only produce 12 THAAD rounds in FY 2025 and 32 in FY 2026 is terrifying for Pentagon war planners. It means Iran can deplete America's high-end interceptor stockpiles in a 2-week conflict, and it will take the US 2 years to replenish them. This gives Iran and other adversaries, like China, in a Taiwan scenario, a massive window of opportunity where US missile defense capabilities are severely degraded. Intentions. Iran's intention: to show the US that protecting its allies is prohibitively expensive. This is a long-term strategy to erode American willpower and force it to reconsider its security commitments in the region. Every cheap drone that forces the launch of an expensive Patriot or THAAD missile is a strategic victory for Tehran. US-Israel's intention. Their immediate intention is survival and defense. However, this data forces a strategic reckoning. They must now accelerate the development of cheaper defense solutions, like directed energy weapons, lasers, high-powered microwaves, and find ways to disrupt the production and launch of enemy missiles before they are fired, left of launch. The current model is a losing game. This intelligence will fuel immense lobbying from defense contractors for new R&D funding and a paradigm shift in military procurement. 3. The Gaza quagmire, the weaponization of aid and the pursuit of legitimacy. The Gaza conflict, as detailed, has moved into a new insidious phase. The battle is no longer just over territory, but over the very narrative of the conflict. The Israeli plot, the GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Fund, as a tool of war. The GHF is a masterstroke of political warfare. Objective 1, manufacturing legitimacy. By creating a fund in coordination with US evangelical missionaries, Israel is targeting a critical political constituency in the United States, shoring up its support base. By establishing IDF-protected food distribution sites, it can generate images of Israeli soldiers helping Palestinians, which are then used to counter accusations of genocide and maintain the international legitimacy of continued conflict. This is a sophisticated psychological operation, TSIOP. Objective 2. Undermining Hamas. By controlling the food supply, Israel aims to break Hamas's control over the civilian population. In a desperate environment, whoever provides bread holds the power. This is a classic counterinsurgency tactic aimed at separating the fish, the insurgents, from the sea, the population. The brutal reality. The soldiers' testimony of a complete breakdown of ethical rules and the admission of firing at crowds reveal the grim truth behind the PR facade. The chaos and violence at these centers are not accidental. They are a feature, not a bug. They serve to terrorize the population into compliance and create no-go zones, furthering Israel's military objectives under the guise of humanitarianism. The IDF investigation into suspected war crimes is almost certainly a containment strategy, a way to show the world they are addressing the problem without ever holding the architects of the policy accountable. Hamas's intention: to document and weaponize Israeli actions. The report from Hamas-run health authorities detailing 549 fatalities is part of this information war. Hamas's goal is to ensure that the mask-off reality of the GHF operation, as described by the Israeli soldier, becomes the dominant international narrative, thereby eroding the legitimacy Israel seeks to build. The U.S. Trump role. Trump's claim that he can achieve a ceasefire in a week is, again, a political statement for a domestic audience. However, Israel's immediate rejection is far more significant. It signals a major rift. Israel's intention: Prime Minister Netanyahu's government has a single, non-negotiable goal: the complete and utter destruction of Hamas. They view any ceasefire that leaves Hamas even partially intact as a strategic defeat. Their rejection of the U.S. vision, particularly the linkage to a Palestinian state via expanded Abraham Accords, is a declaration of strategic independence. They are signaling to Washington: we appreciate your support, but we will define victory on our own terms, and we will not trade our existential security for your regional diplomatic projects. Part 2. The War of Attrition, Russia's Shifting Calculus and NATO's Long Game. The Russia-Ukraine theater is a brutal testament to the primacy of industrial-scale warfare, attrition, and strategic deception. The intelligence reveals a stark contrast between Russia's public posturing and its battlefield actions. 1. The peace talks ploy. Putin's weaponization of diplomacy. On June 27th, Vladimir Putin stated Moscow is ready for a third round of negotiations. This is a classic example of Russian maskirovka, military deception, applied to the diplomatic sphere. The plot and intentions, Putin's real objective. This offer is not a genuine desire for peace on terms acceptable to Ukraine. It is a multi-pronged strategic maneuver launched from a position of battlefield strength. Intention 1, shattering Western unity. The offer is aimed at the doves within the Western alliance, countries like Hungary or factions within Germany and France, who are weary of the war's cost. It allows Putin to appear reasonable, shifting the blame for continued conflict onto Kiev and its hardline Western backers if they refuse to negotiate. Intention 2, consolidating gains. The statement, both sides' draft documents will serve as the basis, is key. Russia's draft document undoubtedly codifies its territorial gains: Crimea, Donbas, the land bridge. By offering to talk, Putin is attempting to legitimize these gains and freeze the conflict on his terms, turning illegally seized territory into a starting point for negotiation. Intention 3, playing to the global south. For nations in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, this readiness for talks reinforces the Russian narrative that this is a regional European conflict prolonged by NATO aggression, and Russia is the party seeking a solution. Intention 4, buying time. While the West debates the offer, Russia continues its relentless offensive. The peace offer provides diplomatic cover for continued military operations. The handover of 6,000 bodies is a calculated humanitarian gesture designed to sweeten the bitter pill, making the offer seem more credible. 2. The battlefield reality, the grind and the encirclement. The battlefield reports from June 27th are the stark reality that undercuts Putin's diplomatic feint. Russia is not talking peace. It is waging a war of annihilation and territorial conquest. The strategic picture, the significant Russian advances in Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk, the loss of Novodanilivka, and the threat to isolate Lyman and Seversk paint a grim picture for Ukraine. This is not a static front. It is a dynamic offensive. The plot. Russia's strategy is a classic military grinder. It uses its massive superiority in artillery and manpower to slowly but inexorably chew through Ukrainian defenses. The goal is attrition, to bleed the Ukrainian army white and exhaust its reserves of men and material faster than the West can supply them. The Azov Brigade, surrounded. The specific mention of the elite 3rd Independent Assault Brigade, Azov, being repelled and surrounded is a major propaganda and military victory for Russia if true. Azov is one of Ukraine's most famous and effective units. Defeating them would be a huge morale blow to Ukraine and a vindication of Russian military prowess. This is the kind of battlefield news that gives Putin the leverage to make peace offers. 3. The economic war. Budgets, sanctions, and pipelines. The economic dimension is as crucial as the kinetic one. Putin's budget deception. Putin's announcement of a planned reduction in defense spending is pure disinformation. The key fact is the current spending, 6.3% of GDP, the highest since the Cold War. The intention. The announcement is for external and domestic consumption. Externally, it supports the peace-loving narrative. Internally, it is meant to reassure a population feeling the economic strain that the state is not on a permanent war footing. The reality is that Russia has converted its economy into a war machine, and the official budget figures likely hide vast off-book expenditures directed to the military-industrial complex, Germany and Nord Stream 2, closing the loopholes. Germany's move to amend laws to prevent the acquisition of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is a significant geopolitical maneuver. The plot. After the strategic blunder of becoming dependent on Russian gas, Germany is now trying to permanently kill the project that symbolized that dependence. The legal issue that the operating company is based in Switzerland was a deliberate loophole created by Gazprom and its partners to circumvent EU regulations. Germany is now closing that loophole. The intention. This is not just about energy. It is a declaration that Germany's Zeitenwende, historic turning point, is real. By ensuring Nord Stream 2 can never be revived, Germany is signaling to Russia that there is no going back to the pre-war status quo. It is also a message to the US, demonstrating that Germany is taking its energy security and alignment with the West seriously, even if it means potential legal battles and financial losses. Preventing US investors from acquiring it is a secondary goal to ensure European control over its own critical infrastructure. 4. The NATO-Russia flashpoint, F-35S in Estonia. The F-35 issue is a microcosm of the new Cold War in Europe. The plot. NATO is moving beyond a defensive posture to one of deterrence by punishment. Placing nuclear-capable F-35S in Estonia is not just about defending Estonian airspace, it's about placing a dagger minutes from St. Petersburg. NATO's intention: to dramatically raise the stakes for any potential Russian aggression against the Baltic states. The message is, if you move on Tallinn, you risk a tactical nuclear response from assets that we can launch before you can even react. This forces a fundamental recalculation in Moscow's military planning. NATO's decision to raise military spending to 5% of GDP is the economic muscle behind this strategic posture. Russia's intention, the Kremlin's warning of an immediate danger, is not a bluff. For Russia, nuclear-capable platforms on its border is an existential threat, akin to the Cuban Missile Crisis for the United States. Its intention is to deter NATO from this deployment through explicit threats. If NATO proceeds, Russia will be forced to respond, likely by deploying its own tactical nuclear weapons in Kaliningrad and Belarus, and by targeting the Estonian airbases with its Iskander missile systems. This creates an incredibly dangerous hair-trigger situation on NATO's eastern flank. Part 3. Southeast Asian Microcosm, the Hun Sen Doctrine and Thai Instability. While the world's attention is on Europe and the Middle East, the events between Thailand and Cambodia are a masterclass in how a smaller, authoritarian state can use guile, opportunism, and brute force diplomacy to dominate a larger but politically divided neighbor. This is the Hun Sen Doctrine in action. 1. The plot. Hun Sen's multi-front assault on a fragile Thailand former Prime Minister and current Senate President. Hun Sen of Cambodia is the central actor here. He is not retired, he is operating as the shadow power, and his actions are a calculated campaign to destabilize and extract concessions from the new Thai government of Paetongtarn Shinawatra. The leaked phone call, the catalyst for the protests in Bangkok, was a leaked phone call between Paetongtarn and Hun Sen. In the world of intelligence, there are few accidental leaks at this level. This was almost certainly a deliberate act by the Cambodian side. The intention to portray the new Thai PM as weak, inexperienced, and overly deferential to a foreign leader. This was designed to inflame Thai nationalist sentiment and provide ammunition to the opposition, thereby weakening her government from within. The border closure and win-win rhetoric. Hun Sen's unilateral closure of border checkpoints, followed by his call for a win-win approach, is a classic strongman tactic. The plot: he creates a crisis, the closure, and then offers to be the one to solve it, but only on his terms. His statement that the party that unilaterally closes can also unilaterally reopen without negotiation is a raw assertion of power. He is dictating the terms, not negotiating them. The win-win is a euphemism for you, Thailand, will concede, and I, Cambodia, will win by getting what I want, which will also be a win for you because I will stop hurting you. The economic warfare. Cambodia's cessation of electricity and fuel imports from Thailand is a significant move. The intention to demonstrate Cambodia's growing economic independence and reduce Thailand's leverage. It's a signal that the old patron-client relationship is over. This, combined with the border closures' impact on trade, $2.48 billion in the first 5 months, is designed to inflict direct economic pain on Thai businesses and communities, creating another vector of internal pressure on the Bangkok government to capitulate to Hun Sen's demands. The psychological warfare. Missiles to Bangkok. The claim that Cambodia possesses weapons that can reach Bangkok is almost certainly a bluff, as Thai security sources assess. The intention. The purpose of the threat is not its military credibility, but its political effect. It is designed to intimidate, create headlines, and project an image of Cambodian strength that far exceeds its actual capabilities. It forces the Thai military to respond, the 5-minute fighter jet readiness, which makes the situation seem more serious and further pressures the civilian government to de-escalate by giving in. Hun Sen's counter-accusation about transnational crime is a classic whataboutism tactic to deflect criticism and muddy the waters. 2. Thailand's precarious position, a government under siege. The Thai government is caught in a perfect storm, much of it engineered by Hun Sen. Intentions and constraints. Survival. Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra's primary goal is the survival of her fragile coalition government. The protests, fueled by Hun Sen's actions, and the upcoming no-confidence vote pose an existential threat. Her statement that she would not respond to the protesters is an attempt to project strength, but it's a risky strategy that could be perceived as arrogance. Balancing act. The government is torn between not appearing weak to a provocative neighbor and not escalating a conflict that could damage its economy and international standing. The deputy foreign minister's criticism of Hun Sen's clear interference is the necessary diplomatic pushback, while the Royal Thai Air Force's statement is the necessary military deterrent. They are trying to build a wall of deterrence around Hun Sen's provocations. The U.S. angle. The upcoming visit to the U.S. for trade talks highlights the government's other priorities. They cannot afford a distracting border conflict when they are trying to secure vital economic interests with their most important trading partner. This gives Hun Sen even more leverage, as he knows Thailand's attention is divided. 3. The Cambodian domestic narrative, the CPP forever. The celebration of the Cambodian People's Party's CPP 74th anniversary is perfectly timed. The intention, it serves as a domestic backdrop to Hun Sen's foreign policy machinations. By highlighting the CPP's historical role in bringing peace, democracy, and territorial integrity, Hun Sen is reinforcing his and his party's legitimacy. The narrative is simple. The CPP, under the Hun family, is the sole guarantor of Cambodian stability and strength. The successful leadership transition to his son, the stable economy, 5.2% growth, and the assertive foreign policy are all presented as evidence of the CPP's success, justifying its iron grip on power. The conflict with Thailand becomes a tool to rally the nation behind the party. Part 4. Echoes and Tremors, the interconnectedness of global flashpoints. The remaining intelligence items are not peripheral. They are echoes of the larger themes of confrontation, personality-driven politics, and information warfare. Korean Peninsula, a return to the brink. The plot. The tit-for-tat restoration of guard posts in the DMZ is a physical manifestation of the complete collapse of the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Agreement. North Korea's nullification of the pact, followed by South Korea's response, signals a deliberate return to a high-tension, hair-trigger military posture. This serves North Korea's interest by creating a crisis that it can potentially leverage for future negotiations or concessions. Trump's good chemistry. Trump's reaffirmation of his relationship with Kim Jong-un, despite Pyongyang's refusal of his letter, is consistent with his personalistic approach to foreign policy. The intention is to remind his supporters, and the world, of his unique diplomatic style, positioning himself as the only one who can handle North Korea. This creates profound uncertainty for allies like South Korea and Japan, who must plan for a future where U.S. policy could pivot dramatically based on a personal relationship rather than a long-standing treaty alliance. The arrest of U.S. citizens. South Korea's arrest of U.S. citizens sending aid to the North is a fascinating move. President Yoon's government is walking a tightrope. The intention is to signal to Pyongyang that Seoul is serious about reducing tensions by cracking down on activists, a key North Korean demand, while simultaneously asserting its own laws. It's a small, desperate attempt to create an off-ramp from the escalating cycle of provocations. U.S. domestic politics, a nation divided. The House's condemnation of protests in L.A. and Trump's comments on the dangers of the presidency are symptoms of deep internal polarization. The strategic implication is that a United States so consumed by internal conflict has less bandwidth, consistency, and willpower to project power abroad. Adversaries like Russia, China, and Iran watch this internal turmoil with glee, as it creates a vacuum of leadership and an opportunity for them to advance their own agendas on the global stage. A divided America is a weakened America, and that is a central goal of its rivals' foreign policy. COVID-19 origins, the information war with China. The WHO's statement is a carefully worded diplomatic condemnation of China. The failure to provide hundreds of virus sequences and data from the Wuhan labs is not an oversight. It is a deliberate act of state policy. China's intention, the plot, is one of absolute narrative control. By withholding this critical data, China prevents any conclusive investigation that might point to a lab leak or to negligence by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. The origin of COVID-19 is a matter of paramount national security and regime legitimacy for the CCP. Admitting any fault would be a catastrophic blow to its credibility both at home and abroad. This standoff with the WHO is a front in the long-term information war between China and the West, a war over truth, accountability, and the narrative of the 21st century. Grand synthesis: the 5 defining theses of the current global order. Drawing these disparate threads together, a clear, if unsettling, picture of our current reality emerges. This reality can be summarized in 5 core theses. 1. The primacy of asymmetric attrition. The era of decisive, conventional warfare between major powers is being supplanted by a new paradigm. The Iran-THAAD example is the blueprint. Weaker states and non-state actors are successfully waging economic and military attrition against technologically superior but fiscally constrained superpowers. The goal is not to win on the battlefield in a single day, but to make the cost of victory so high for the adversary that they are forced to abandon their objectives. This applies to Houthi drones in the Red Sea, Iranian missiles, and the sheer volume of Russian artillery in Ukraine. 2. The weaponization of everything, the lines between war and peace have been irrevocably blurred. The intelligence shows that diplomacy, Putin's peace offer, economics, border closures, pipeline politics, information, leaked calls, disinformation, and even humanitarian aid, the GHF in Gaza, are now primary weapons in the arsenal of statecraft. The modern battlefield is everywhere, from the trenches of Donetsk to the servers hosting social media to the corridors of international health organizations. 3. The return of the strongman and the personality cult. The actions of Putin, Hun Sen, and the rhetoric of Donald Trump demonstrate a shift away from institutional process-driven foreign policy towards a model dominated by powerful, unpredictable individuals. These leaders leverage nationalism, project an aura of strength, and engage in personalistic diplomacy that can bypass and often contradict their own state bureaucracies. This makes the international system more volatile, as alliances and enmities can shift based on personal chemistry rather than national interests. 4. The exploitation of internal fractures. Sophisticated state actors no longer see their adversaries as monolithic blocks. Their primary strategy is to identify and exploit internal divisions, political, social, and economic. Russia's peace offer targets Western political divisions. Hun Sen's provocations target Thailand's fragile domestic coalition. China and Russia's information operations target the deep social and political polarization within the United States. The goal is to weaken the adversary from within, making them incapable of mounting a coherent external response. 5. The sovereignty imperative. In the face of this chaos, the driving motivation for nearly every actor is a raw, uncompromising assertion of national sovereignty and core interests. Israel is rejecting U.S. guidance to pursue its own definition of security. Russia is willing to become a pariah state to secure its perceived sphere of influence. Germany is rewriting laws to control its own infrastructure. Cambodia is asserting its dominance over a neighbor. China is walling off information to protect its regime narrative. The rules-based international order is being openly challenged and in many cases ignored in favor of a ruthless pursuit of national interest, a 21st century version of Westphalian sovereignty on steroids. This 48-hour snapshot is a chilling prologue. It reveals a world that is not stumbling into conflict, but is actively and strategically engaged in it across multiple domains, with every actor playing a complex game of chess, bluffs, and brutal attrition. The coming years will be defined by how these plots unfold and which nations have the resilience, cunning, and will to survive the unraveling.